Oh, nice to see some faces on the screen. Welcome to Supervision. Today, we are very excited to have Celeste Stewart here. She's the founder of Bold Curiosity. And Bold Curiosity focuses on meaningful learning experiences. So needless to say, Celeste is incredibly passionate about adult learning and creating enabling environments for learners and the leaders she engages with. So yeah, I'd love to hand over to Celeste and take it off.
Thanks for the introduction, Andrea. Hi, everyone, and it's lovely to meet you all. I hope you enjoyed the song. That is one of my favorite songs. And when they asked for a song that I'd like to play, I think I needed all of like 3 seconds to identify that as a nice warm-up song, so to get us all nice and upbeat as we head towards the end of the year. So I'm Celeste Stewart. I'm the owner and founder of Bold Curiosity, a leadership development consultancy. I am very passionate about adult learning. I've always been, through my own experience as an adult learner, and now through the consultation work that I do and the learning programs and solutions that I co-create with my clients and implement. And so in addition to learning, the other topic I'm also very passionate about is curiosity. And so much so that it's in my business name. And so I actually put my hand up and sent Julia an email and said, is it okay if I come and talk to your community about curiosity? I think it's a term that's become quite fashionable these days. It's something that we talk about a lot, but do we actually understand the construct? Do we understand what it means? And so I'll talk to you a little bit more about how I've become so entrenched in the literature and understanding what curiosity means. And then we'll go on a journey in the 2 hours together to look at some definitions. And then I think more importantly, look at what, how can all of us in our respective roles become ambassadors of curiosity for ourselves, and then also think about how can we encourage curiosity in the people that we engage with, whether your role is a coach or an OD consultant. And I'm quite keen to hear who we've got in the room, or someone who heads up talent or learning. I think we all need to set people up to connect with their innate curiosity, or like I like to say, to reconnect with your curiosity. Because if you look at children, they are curious, but we go through systems and we experience things like school and workplace where sometimes we are that curiosity is not allowed and it's not encouraged. And so we have a role to play in helping other people reconnect to their curiosity. So I've got some slides that I've prepared to guide the conversation. Also, to be quite honest, to guide me, because I love talking, you guys. If I don't have slides to guide me, I will just talk forever and go all over the place. So this is to keep me focused and to make sure that we stick to the relevant topics that I'd like to cover. So I'm going to share my screen with you. What I'll also do as we go through the conversation today is also try and build in at least 2 points for us to go into breakout rooms and discuss either with a partner or in small groups, depending on where our numbers are at a bit later, give you an opportunity to sit with the content a little bit, reflect on it, and discuss it with a partner. Okay, we're all good. Yeah. Maybe while I pull up my slides, let me know in the chat, what was your highlight of the day today? This is the highlight. Oh, sweet. Reading articles of Soul Child. Okay. An unhurried schedule. Oh, yes, please. An unexpected refund. Oh, hell yeah. It's like finding a 100 Rand in your jeans pocket or your skirt pocket, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Some breakthrough work with a long-term client. Nice.
Mhm.
A
Ooh.
well-needed facial. Oh. Oh. I might actually take all of these items and add it to like my bucket list for this holiday that's approaching in December that I think I'm going to have. I don't know about you guys, but I always build up to this like fantasy holiday where I think I'm going to do nothing. And it's just so incredibly hard for me to do nothing.
Mm.
Awesome. So some of you might still be thinking about the highlight, and that's okay. I think I'll get started with some of the content, and feel free to continue adding your points to the chat. I've got my son trying to navigate and not get into the screen and find his iPad, kind of moving around the table. But yeah, I'm very excited to be exploring curiosity with you today. And true to the word, curiosity, the exploration today is going to take, it's going to show up as me sharing some gems and insights and some of the content from some of the thought leaders I've met along the way with my studies, and I'll talk more about that later. And then also to look at what are our own questions about curiosity, and then to get us thinking about how do we help other people connect to their innate curiosity. This conversation started with us looking at the World Economic Forum. This image may be familiar to some people in the room, but this image comes from the World Economic Forum, and it looks at the 16 skills needed for the 21st century learner. And you'll see that curiosity is right there on the list, amongst other character qualities and competencies like creative thinking, like resilience or persistence or grit, leadership, collaboration, etc. So we know that curiosity is there. Some of us have always believed in curiosity and seen the value of it, but it is also great, and it helps with our case when it's actually on a list now, and that can help us to drive the case for curiosity in the workplace. But not only in the workplace, of course, we need to think about how do we foster curiosity at home with our own children. How do we foster curiosity at school, which is like a big topic. And I know I'm not going to focus on that today, but there's such a connection between how people experience and express their curiosity as adult learners, and how that's very much influenced by how they've been able to, or how they've been encouraged or not to connect with their curiosity at school. And so it's there, it's on the list, great. So the invitation for today said the following, and there's a reason why I'm reminding you of the invitation, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the topic was exploring curiosity. The World Economic Forum listed as one of the important skills, but what is curiosity and how do we foster it? So during the session, I will explore some content around what some thought leaders have said, people in the academic space, and some business thought leaders. And then how do we, beyond the definitions, how do we find ways, practical ways to build it? So I do love coffee, and so as your facilitator for the next 2 hours, the 2 questions I have, and what I'd like to give you an opportunity to think about in a minute is, I want to know what's brewing in your mind right now with regards to the topic of curiosity. So what questions have emerged for you about curiosity since receiving the invite? And then what questions do you have about fostering your own curiosity as well as the curiosity of others? So the way we're going to work this exercise is, I'll set the timer and I'll give you 2 minutes to gather your own thoughts in response to those 2 questions. I know that we all love group work and group activity, and I'm going to get to that now. But there's also something incredibly valuable when we are given the time and the space to sit with our own thoughts. So 2 minutes to capture your own questions, and then we are going to divide you into breakout rooms where you'll discuss it either with a partner or in 3 small groups. So I'll set the timer on my side. And give you 2 minutes to think about your questions. Okay, everyone, so that's your 2 minutes up. Please make sure that you've made a note of the questions so that you can have your facilitated discussion in the breakout room. So what I'll do, because we're in a small group, is divide you into 3 groups. And I'm going to give you 10 minutes to go into your groups and talk to each other about your responses to those 3 questions. Just a heads up that when you return from your breakout room discussion, I am going to ask that there's 1 volunteer in each group that just takes us through some feedback and talks us through what the group's consolidated responses were. So 3 breakout rooms. And let's give it 10 minutes. Okay. Naratu, at least it sounds like you're talking about something related to, the broader topic. I've often heard people catching up on like the good doctor and what's happening on Twitter, who's fighting with whom. So at least it's relevant to the topic. So it's all good.
I hope Pippa and Rikus will forgive me for talking too much.
Let's get some feedback. Let's start with room 1. Can we get a sense of what were your collective questions and responses to those questions, please? Alistair, Cardin, and is it
Margs?
Margs.
Do you want me to go, guys? Should I just jump in and you can add? Is that okay? Yeah. We,
Absolutely fine, Marks. Yes.
okay, speakers, if I feel free to jump in, but we raised a few things. Questions emerged about curiosity. We sort of spoke about curiosity as a quality of presence as opposed to a line of questioning. We spoke a bit about mindfulness and how that, because the whole process is about being open and seeing what comes up. And so, you know, really realizing that that's what we need to be cultivating, a presence, as opposed to asking the next question, as it were. And then a question about how do we work with the drive for certainty within ourselves and within our clients, particularly when it's an anxiety response. So I know for myself, you know, when I feel anxious, I want steady rocks to stand on. And so I can be curious to a point, and then I want to land somewhere. And so how do we work with that drive, and how do we sustain curiosity? Be curious just a little bit longer, as it were. And then there was a question about what gets in the way of curiosity. Somebody spoke about, Karen spoke about a prospective client that she saw who just was so defended and so not curious about anything, and how that evoked a response in her. And so not only how can we pique somebody's curiosity, and is it possible to cultivate that in a client, but how do we remain curious in that context? So it was sort of a double-edged sword, really. And then just as a last, somebody said that the thing that came up was that curiosity killed the cat, the saying, and she was saying, when does curiosity work against us? You know, is there a point at which curiosity can kill the cat? So that was sort of some of the dialogue that came up in our group. And as I say, both speaking about clients, how do we cultivate that? And then in ourselves, how do we stay curious? Like particularly if we want an outcome, if we, you know, working with clients and there's an outcome that we're working towards, how do we stay curious with that and not keep driving forward? So that was some of the stuff that came up for us.
Cool, thank you. And I'm going to deliberately not answer the questions right now, because I'll also share with you one of the thought leaders who talks about being in a state where we are aware of our curiosity and how that then drives learning and helps us with exploratory behavior. But just on this point about curiosity kill the cat, I mean, there's so many, we've got all these sayings in our language that actually puts people off from being curious. Like there's Auntie Pandora and the box that she opened, you know, her curiosity led to disaster. And there's the saying about curiosity killed the cat. And so we also need to be mindful of how we, you know, how do we refer to curiosity very overtly and sometimes indirectly? What are we saying about curiosity? Are we dissuading others through some of these, the points that we make when we talk about it? And I'll talk about killing the cat and Pandora's box and everything else. And I think I might need another slot. I don't know if we can fit everything into into 2 hours.
Next year.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Group 1. Can we hear from Group 2, please? That's Adam, Kate, and Natasha.
I'm happy to jump in. Shall I do that and you add in? We didn't get to the second question, but just on the first one, we started having quite a lot of discussion. And the first question that came up was this, how can we be curious without violating somebody? Or what's the line between being curious and being nosy? We didn't really go into it, but I thought it was a really, so 2 of the 3 of us had that thought. And then the one that we sort of went a little bit further into was this idea of curiosity being such an innate human quality, and yet it feels so shut down in the world, and how come? And we then started exploring our different experiences of, you know, coming into the world with the sort of the curiosity of a child, which feels so present and it has such an energy. And then how the education system mostly tends to shut that curiosity down and require a certain response or a certain, and you know, that happens in, you know, high schools, universities, and beyond. And I mean, two of us were saying it's only really in the last 5 years that our curiosity is bubbling again. There's something about, and I guess I'm adding this on, maybe there's something about, you know, letting go of some of those defenses that keep, or those patterns that keep curiosity quite boxed in us as human beings. Yeah, that's as far as we got. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Natasha and Adam.
Yes, we discussed about it further, that we think it has to do with the environment the person are into, because like in coaching or counseling, we have opportunity to be curious and explore both with our clients and ourselves on how we work. At the same time, other fields can be very solid, like you can't think further, you can't do anything because you have to think about the structure, you have to think about the budget and time, performance. So it has to do with the nurturing environment and supportive environment to be curious.
Thank you. I think I've been quite intrigued myself. I certainly didn't set out to study curiosity and dive into the education system in school, but one can't help but look into the education system. They're just these two neighbors. But what I find really interesting, and this is something I started thinking about the other day, I definitely think schools need to look into how we can rethink learning. And I think it is happening, but very slowly, too slowly. And if you haven't seen the TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson, where he talks about skill creativity, please do watch it. It was a game changer for me as well. But he talks about in his TED Talk, I mean, there's like a million gems in his TED Talk, but he also says that the change in education is not going to come from people in the system. It's going to come from the outside. And so what I find extremely exciting right now are these cases where parents are starting their own schools, and you've got schools that are designed on completely different learning systems, and not these systems that prepare our children and our learners for an environment where everything's going to be predictable and it's about rote learning and it's about memorizing. And so in environments like that, I find curiosity is encouraged a bit more, independent thinking is encouraged a bit more, interest and all of that. But there's another point I wanted to make now. I've lost my train of thought. You see, this is why I have slides. Yeah, oh yes, this is what I wanted to say. With COVID happening and everyone going into like hard lockdown, do you guys remember when we all of us, those of us who have kids, we had to become school teachers? I suddenly became deeply grateful for teachers. Prior to that, I was very critical of the schooling system and teachers, and I think I am still quite critical about them. But what I've also come to understand about learners in the system is that sometimes learners don't entertain their curiosity because the content that they're dealing with is quite hard. And so avoiding the topic is a lovely way to then cope with the complexity at the time. And so part of us building systems that welcomes curiosity is we need to look into the work of Carol Dweck, where she talks about growth mindset. And we need to start teaching children that learning something different is complex. And we need to teach children that a certain part of your brain lights up when you learn something new and difficult. So difficulty is part of the course. And so when we understand that it's human nature to resist complex things, you see it with some of your clients, our children do it as well. So it's partly, we can say that it's about the environment, but it's also about how we respond when we found ourselves needing to learn new things. And I've seen that with my children at home now. There's certain aspects of maths that my eldest son just goes, oh, this is so difficult. I don't want to learn this. I can't learn it. And then, no willingness to entertain the curiosity. And you almost need to then do some coaching around how you can do that. So it's also about the learner, the child in the system. Yeah. Awesome. Let's hear from our next group, Lerato, Pippa, and Rikus.
Should I give it a go, guys? Maybe I will.
Please do.
Okay, so we, similarly to group 2, we spoke a bit about the environment that cultivates and encourages a curious mind. And we looked at the fact that some environments, an example, which we were lucky because Rikus was on our team, a technical environment, which is where Rikus works in, it generally requires that you already come with a curious mind, with an inquisitive mind, and so it becomes easier for those individuals in those environments to be able to apply their curiosity in the work that they do. And then we also spoke about a role like coaching, which by its design requires you to, generally poke at things, and that's some level of curiosity, and help others become a little bit more curious as well in their lives. So, instead of just dealing with people at face value, but, helping them dig deeper. And understanding what could be happening in their areas that they're wanting to address, etc. We also then spoke about, sorry, let me just close this. I'm in the parking lot, so we're all on our mobiles and everybody on speaker. We also spoke about with curiosity. Oh, my train of thought is losing me. Whether as individuals we're curious as a standard, or whether we're curious in certain areas of our lives, and not as curious in other areas of our lives as we could be. For an example, that could it be that when you're interested in one area, that you'll spend more time trying to dig there and get as much information as you can, whereas if you're not particularly interested in another area of your life, that you could be unaware that you're actually less curious there. So the awareness then of what are your curiosity levels, you as an individual, that do you apply more curiosity in other areas than you do in others, and really what could be driving that kind of behavior. We didn't get to all the answers. Pippa, Rikus, please jump in if I've left anything out.
Good for me. Good for you. You've done a great job of summing that up. Thank you.
Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.
And don't worry if you didn't have a chance to answer the question. The purpose of the exercise was to make you aware of the questions that have started to brew in your prefrontal cortex, or the questions that were there that you perhaps thought about. So it was really giving you an opportunity to connect with your curiosity and to express that with your colleagues. So I'm going to ask you to suspend the curiosity for a minute while I talk to you some more about what got me to this point. And I'm going to bring some thought leaders into the room around how different people define curiosity, and you'll see that as I talk through the essence of what their work is about, it will talk to some of the points that you've mentioned around interest, around how do we get people excited to learn and be curious, and then we'll take the conversation into the next bit, which is how do we use this in our day-to-day work. And so I'm going to talk to you about my fascination with curiosity. We've spent a good 46 minutes together, and you know very little about me. So I thought we'll start there. And I thought I'll get very personal with you very quickly. And so this is a picture of my family. This is me over here, the diva smiling at the camera. But I was always very curious as a child. I have clear memories about asking questions all the time about everything. And children get to an age where And we've actually got research with the numbers that shows like how many questions children ask and how that number decreases, especially when they go into schools. And for me, being a child and being at home, I always engaged my curiosity, and I always asked questions. The questions were not always welcomed. That conversation is for another day. And I didn't always get all the answers that I was looking for, but I can clearly remember me being curious. And if I reflect back and I look back now, that was really the start of my journey as a very young researcher. And I've basically come full circle now. I also remember being able to sit with a question for a very long period of time. And the minute I got an answer to the question, it brought me a sense of joy for a short period. And then before I knew it, I was on a quest to find out about something else again. So there was always something that I was thinking about, something I was grappling with. And so I enjoyed the journey. I enjoyed getting to an answer, the destination, and the experience that I had in between the 2 points. Just to elaborate some more about my fascination with curiosity. Growing up in my family and growing up where we didn't have access to books, like lots of new books in our family. But my parents instilled a love for reading at a very young age. And reading for me and books was a way that I could escape and entertain my curiosity. And so some of my favorite memories of being a child, other than eating chocolate when I could, was going to the library, the public library, and walking from our home, walking for half an hour to the library, taking out books for 3 weeks. And I would always go to these like children's adventure books. I love getting caught up in the story. I love trying to figure out what the plot of the story was. I tried to beat the author to get to the essence of the story. And so for me, that was another way that my curiosity manifested, and that's how I kept my curiosity alive. Fast forward many years later, in 2014, I went on my own, went completely solo. I was in partnership with someone at the time, and I really became very clear on my journey with what I wanted to do as a consultant and as someone in the learning space. And so I started Bold Curiosity in 2014. And at the time, the emphasis in the business was to help young people transition from the world of school to the world of work. And so that was where a lot of my energy was spent. That was where most of my work and where a lot of my focus was. The business has expanded beyond that since. But at the time when I chose Bold Curiosity as my business name, I didn't know that it would become so much more than just my business name. I knew that Bold Curiosity was a brand identity, but it was also a statement of me saying, I'm embracing my curious self, and my wish for other people is that they also embrace their curiosity, because I saw what my curiosity did for me. I saw how it motivated me, how it drove my learning, how it took my world that was very limited and got me thinking about other things and aiming for bigger goals. And so at the time, brand identity, but what I didn't know was that I would actually later on then go into or add another chapter to my life story, which was to sign up for an MPhil and do my postgrad studies and look at epistemic curiosity specifically and the role that it plays in self-directed learning. So it has become so much more than the business name. It's taken me on a lovely journey of trying to understand this construct a bit more so that I can offer something to the world in this space. I think in South Africa, post-apartheid, and if you look at our schooling system, there's such a burning need, there's such a burning platform for us to help learners think about their agency and build their desire to learn through curiosity. And so that's another little driver for me and why I am so passionate about this topic. So let's get into the thought leaders and some of the content that I've prepared. And we are going to have another breakout session thereafter. So part of my postgrad studies is or not part of it. The big product you need to deliver is your thesis. And so my literature review that I've done was to look into how people in the academic or the scholarly community have defined the stuff of curiosity that I'm exploring in my study. And so one cannot look at curiosity without coming across the work of Daniel Berlin. Daniel Berlin, at the time, which was around 1950-ish, at that point, curiosity was very much seen as a personality trait. And so all the literature and all the studies kind of confirmed that argument and that view that you're born curious or not. And so Berlin at the time started to challenge that view, and his research showed that curiosity was, for some people, a trait, but that it was also a state, and connected his research to drive theory as well as motivation theory. Berlin's work showed that cognitive uncertainty leads to increased arousal. And when there was the increased arousal, people would want to explore, people would want to acquire information, and people were motivated to learn. And when they acquire, or when they're able to close the gap, they have learned, they've gained additional knowledge. And so he started to look at curiosity, motivation, arousal, and learning. And ultimately what he wanted to do was take his research beyond that and show how motivation, curiosity, and arousal then helps the person become better at increased performance on the job. So you have that measurement as well. Daniel Berlin, and the contribution in his work is that he also coined the term epistemic curiosity, and he also helped to kind of define that through his research, which is what I'm also studying in my study now. And curiosity, epistemic curiosity, as he defines it, and I've got it on the screen here, is information and knowledge-seeking activity that is situationally aroused when individuals are confronted with information that challenges what they know, what they believe, and whatever the attitude is towards something. And so someone spoke earlier about is it a standard versus is our curiosity peaked when we are interested in something or certain areas of our lives? And I suppose Daniel Berlin's work kind of talks to that situational or being aroused in that specific situation. His work or his research then shows that people are then motivated to explore the environment for this information that will result in them acquiring the information. They won't feel that there's the gap any longer, and they're then able to move on. So his big contribution was around epistemic curiosity and arousal theory. Daniel Berlin's work also, and his research also specifically, or there was an element where he looked at new people coming into a working environment. So this is the bit that talks so closely to my study, where I'm specifically looking at grads entering the world of work and how they can use their curiosity to drive their learning. And so when he looked at socialization and the role that curiosity plays in the socialization period, he recognized that sort of curiosity explorers or learners go through 3 phases. Initially, there's the observations. If you think about a new person coming into a system, they receive all the cues about everything they need to learn, everything that's new, everything that's different, all the people they need to meet, all the processes they need to make sense of, all the systems they need to learn. So that's the sort of observation. Then they go through a process of consultation, and consultation is where you really engage with stakeholders in your community, stakeholders in the business. You talk to people, you try and make sense of this newness, you're doing something with the curiosity. So you go beyond the observation, you now sort of go into action mode. And so he called that consultation. And then the third layer to that, in the context of socialization, was thinking, or also what we know now. There's another old body of knowledge around sense making, but it's when the person has observed, they've consulted with people, and now they come back and they try and make sense of everything that they've seen. They try and conceptualize, they try and really close the gap and consolidate everything that they've learned. So in the case of socialization, you also observe that this is how people experience their curiosity when they come into a new situation. The next thought leader I'd like to bring into the room is George Loewenstein. And his work, and just about everyone who studies work is curiosity, almost uses Daniel Berlin's work as a basis and then builds on from that. And so Loewenstein, though he agreed with a lot of what Berlin had posited about curiosity, his theory was slightly different in that he made the connection between curiosity and Gestalt psychology, or the information gap theory. And he believed that cognitive induced deprivation that arises from the perception of a gap in knowledge and information is what drives curiosity in people. So when I become aware of the fact that there's something I don't know, there's a gap in my knowledge, the awareness is what piques my curiosity, and that when I'm in that state, I'm more excited to close the gap and acquire this information that I need. When I get to the point where I've plugged the gap, my curiosity reduces until I'm in the next situation where I become aware of, there's something new, there's something different, there's something I need to learn. And he also, his contribution to research was that curiosity functions like any other drive states, like, when you feel that you're hungry, you will eat. And so that's how he viewed curiosity. He also in his research showed that we acquire information and it's goal orientated, it's targeted towards something. And as people, as explorers, we seek out answers to questions that we either ask ourselves or that other people may ask us. So there's also that connection to self-awareness there. The bit of research that I discovered that I got very excited about, and I didn't expect to become this excited about this specific thought leader, but Paul Sylvia and his work around curiosity, which takes on a slightly different perspective. He's done amazing research around exploring interest and the psychology of interest. So you will find that when you start to do academic research around curiosity, you'll also come across interest, you'll come across something called need for cognition, you'll come across sense making. So there's all these other constructs that are so closely connected to curiosity, and there are quite a lot of similarities between them. But he took on a slightly different angle